Good evening.
Welcome everyone to Inside Vaping, your resource for vaping news. Our show airs live weekly every other Tuesday night, and I'm getting echo starting at 10 p.m. Eastern via YouTube live event and right here at the VPLiveNetwork.com. Welcome to a very interesting broadcast today. I'm sure unless you live under a rock, you've heard about what's going on today. We have a bit of an analogy for you to start off here. The 7 signs of the apocalypse are... Why am I getting echo? This is terrible, man.
You need to mute Mixler. So you need to go up to the top of the VP Live page and mute Mixler. There's a volume slider over there.
Thank you very much.
And then that should
that was quite annoying. Okay, so we've got a bit of an analogy here for you. There are 7 signs of the apocalypse, right? The 7 signs are clear. We'll be struck by deadly plagues, famines, and earthquakes. The sky will turn dark and the oceans will turn to blood. And the Antichrist will emerge to fight the final battle between good and evil. Is that dramatic enough for you? Well, now we're involved in the 7 signs of the apocalypse, and lo, they are coming to pass. The 7 signs are clear. We'll be struck by deeming regulations, bad science, and greed. The sky will turn dark and e-liquid will turn to blood. Man, Jerry's very dramatic. And the FDA will emerge to fight the final battle between e-cigarettes and big tobacco. So welcome. Welcome to the Vapocalypse Show. I am, of course, Dane, for those of you who don't know me since I've been gone. But I'm gone, along with my co-host this week, James Martin, our illustrious leader, and Ed the Green, all the way from some hotel room in Illinois somewhere. And joining us tonight is also Upstomp, which we are very happy to have on our broadcast this evening.
We did have a fill-in for Jerry this week. We had, because Jerry is actually doing his Coast Guard duty, so I have a picture of Captain Ahab up there from he's taking over for one of his colleagues. But fortunately Upstomp was good enough to fill in for Jerry, last minute's notice. And I know. I think Nick is upset now.
I know he's very.
We'll have him on next time in 2 weeks.
We will.
It's a date.
Yeah, I'll be back. I'll be back in 2 weeks to horn in on that one too.
Last minute.
Right at the last minute,
hour.
right before Nick comes online.
No broadcast for you.
So, Dane and I poured over the docs. And I got to say, with these regulations that are coming out, they're very obtuse. And the information is spread out. So I'm going to issue a little disclaimer here before we begin. This information is a result of Dana and myself studying the regulations released by the FDA and the information we have gleaned from various consumer and trade organizations. We welcome corrections. This is a very complicated topic, and in the upcoming weeks we will no doubt revisit this if corrections or additional clarification is necessary, and I'm sure it will be necessary.
Yeah.
The truth is, the information is very, very spread out, and it's difficult to navigate. So what we will attempt to do is give the audience a high-level view of what we have learned. And with that disclaimer, I will also add that Dane and I are consumers. And so is Ed, and Jay, obviously you have e-liquid company, so you don't have quite the same perspective, but at the same time I know you're not shy in voicing your opinion. So
I am not, but I also need to release a caveat saying that I am equally as ignorant of, of the regulations that you guys are at this point.
Agreed.
I've been waiting for guidance from the national organizations to this point, and as you guys know, that has yet to be released. So we're still looking at a few days here where I think we're all going to be fully informed by those who really know what's going on.
Yeah.
I will say this: I have read the documents, and they are still befuddling in a lot of ways. There are many contradictions. There are many citations in those pages that lead you to other places and back again. It's a very storied trip around a very murky path, and it keeps leading you around and around and around. But we've done our best to break down some very big, important points that are actually very pointed and very specific to this industry that people, I'm sure, will find of some benefit.
Yeah, somebody asked what Jay's juice name was, and that would be Hingham Hill.
That is correct.
Yes.
Thank you for pronouncing it correctly.
Did I?
How do you pronounce it
accidentally.
wrong?
Dimitri
Hingham
always
Hill?
found a way. Dimitri always.
Hingham?
Hingham
Hingham Hill.
So, Ed, where are you at right now? Because that does not look like your normal vape player.
I am in Bloomington, Illinois, working at the Bridgestone factory where they make the biggest tire ever.
Wow.
It's like it goes on one of those big earth movers. So I'm working on the air compressors over there, and I just came in to find out. I hear the FDA did deeming regulations. I had no idea that was happening.
I don't think any of us did. Well, some people did.
Let me get in some happy stuff. I got this Pressa TC100. It's got the nice big 26650 battery.
Gotta love that.
This whole side is a button. The whole side. Had a friend of mine send me a theorem, which I am thoroughly enjoying. And I also got this week this little guy. It's called the Knight version 1. Little 75 watt, I do believe, but I only run it at 45. Battery goes in the top, sits in here, button here, that big there. I like it. It's been good.
Very cool.
My Cleto tanks have been holding up well, and aside from that, I'm just I've been working a whole lot. I've been out of town a lot. I got to go back to Iowa again. So this episode is me catching up on what you guys take, because I trust Dane, and I don't know about James, but I trust Dane. I don't know.
Dane just exudes trust.
Yes,
it's that celebrity chef thing.
It's when he says moron that I just love it. Just when he's a moron.
I said that a lot when I read those documents, by the way, because the image of Mitch Zeller in my head and the word moron just seems synonymous, and it just kept appearing over. I read the documents in his voice in my head.
See, here's my problem. I almost feel like I was duped by Zeller, because you can go through the timeline and see, and look, I'm embarrassed to admit it, but I did legitimately, from what he said with his, what did he call it? His
continuum of
risk. The continuum of risk that he touted so highly, and talking about how some of these advancements could be a boon to public health. And he believed in the continuum of risk. And then again and again, we've seen issues with him actually following through with what he believes. One example that comes to mind was the modified risk tobacco application process that Swedish Match went through on their snus products. And of course, that had no good result. And now we see the same thing with these overreaching regulations. And we're going to cover an article later on in the evening that actually quotes Zeller as using the word prohibition in the article, a vapor prohibition. So it is a complete reversal, and I do feel duped and embarrassed by the fact that at one point I thought he was actually looking out for the interests of public health.
You have to split the bag.
Believe. Oh, yeah. I get half the BOD award tonight. Rod, if you're getting echo, you need to mute the Mixler stream. That goes for anybody in the room. So if you're watching the video on the YouTube embedded link, you need to make sure the Mixler stream on VP Live is muted. Yep,
yes,
that will make it go away. Well. Just drag the volume slider all the way down. That will fix the problem. So we're going to kind of jump right into the FDA regulations. I know Ed has a video that he wants to share with everybody, and we're going to play that after the show, or after we cover this topic. But we do want to get to the topic at hand. Before we do, real quickly, I don't have any new vape gear. I did get, I want to relate a little story because this has some relevance to the topic at hand. So most people who follow the show know I'm a big fan of the Juul. And this week, and this was unbeknownst to me, apparently a couple of my coworkers had been talking, and they are both smokers. And one of them approached me earlier last week and said, I'm done. I want to quit using cigarettes. I want to switch to vaping. Help me with this. We currently have a prohibition against smoking or vaping at our college, which means you actually, what he had been doing is getting in his car and driving to the property limits and then smoking there because he is allowed a smoke break. And basically, I set him up with a Juul, recommended that he pick up an Ego AIO, and, a week later he contacted me and said he had ordered one. I gave him one to use, and he returned it today. And he said he had ordered one, and it had come in, and he was very, very happy with the performance of the device and the fact that it sated his need for nicotine. And he was also ordering an Ego AIO because he didn't always want this blast of 59 milligrams. And Jay's holding up the AIO there. Let me switch to him here. And he's still got Jerry's lower third. That just sounds wrong. But the combination, we've talked about this a little bit, Dane. The combination of those two devices, it's a great combo because here you have something for a new vapor that can satisfy that urge that normally only an analog can scratch. And I understand high nicotine is an option as well, but in addition to that, you have something that they can use for situations where they don't want that big blast of nicotine and they just want to satisfy the hand habit. So that was a good testimonial from him. The other lady at work, by the way, had been smoking 2 packs of cigarettes a day for many, many years. That is an incredible amount of combustible tobacco going through your system. The other lady that contacted me, same thing, recommended the same setup. And the result from her was that she had reduced her cigarette consumption to the point of where she was only having a cigarette in the morning. It's only been a week, so I don't think necessarily a cold turkey approach would be the best for her. But she did give my wife and I a nice $50 gift certificate for a restaurant that's local to us, which again was totally unnecessary. But, and I explained to her, I told her, the FDA is currently, they just released regulations, and they are going to basically regulate this out of existence if they're left unchallenged. And she was shocked by that. She was completely stymied by the fact that a product that she had just discovered would be more effective for her than what she'd tried previously with patches was in jeopardy. Obviously, we know that it's going to be 2 to 3 years before she won't be able to get what she's using currently unless they go through a PMTA process. But it's still just mind-boggling to somebody who's new to the product to hear that it is being basically made an example of. So that's pretty much the story on that. So should we get into the discussion about the elephant in the room here, Dane?
Yeah, I think so. I'll show off my little mod first. This is actually from Jerry. Jerry sent this to me, so thank you, Jerry. I miss you. This is the Innokin Cortex with an iSub V-Tank. I like this thing. 2 amp charging. I've been saying that all day. 2 amp charging. Love 2 amp charging. This thing charges really fast. It's got a 3300 mAh battery. It goes in temp control as well. I have these stainless steel coils in here right now. And Ed will be stunned to hear this, but I am actually vaping at 30 watts. That is unbelievable. Whoa. I know. That is absolutely the highest in my vaping life ever. I don't think I've ever vaped over 15 watts until now. But
12.7.
12.7 is actually a very good number for me.
12.7 gigawatts?
12.7. It's a very good number.
That's the Darwin.
Yep. I love the Darwin. I still do. I'm a big fan.
All right. So, the FDA regulations were entered into the Federal Register today. That is May 10th, 2016. You can also refer to it as 510. Do you get it? 510, the connector that we have on top of all our mods.
It took me forever to get that correlation, but I finally did. It did. It took me a while. I was like 510.
The irony. So those went into effect today. I'm sure the majority of our audience is already aware of the implications surrounding these regulations, but as of August 8th, 2016, the clock is officially counting down towards the August 8th, 2018 PMTA enforcement date. So currently it's May 10th. As of August 8th, 2016, there's going to be some steps that have to be taken in order to be in compliance with, I believe it was the Obama's, what was it called?
The Family
Smoking
Tobacco...
Family and
it's-
Tobacco Smoking Prevention Act.
Correct.
Which part of this FDA process is going to do. So
It would have been better on August 1st, because we would have had the 801.
there you go.
Oh, there you go.
The 510 and the 801. There are some aspects of these regulations which are going to affect us in as little as 3 months. So that will be that August 8th or May 10th, August 8th, 2016 date. There are others, specifically PMTA approval deadlines, which are a number of years out. Regardless, this is in effect a doomsday clock, which has started ticking down. And Dane, we've got an image of the doomsday clock here. And it's kind of interesting. We don't have any detailed explanation for you on the doomsday clock, but there's a lot of history there. And basically, the clock currently, I think as of 2015, let me take a look at this. I believe I have an infographic here. As of 2015, I think it's 3 minutes to midnight. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Yeah. I'm not sure about the 2016 date. Let me see. And I still don't see it. I
think it stopped at 2015.
Did it?
Yeah,
Here we
and then
go.
they'll
Doomsday
update it
clock
next year.
graph. Here it is. So doomsday clock graph, and I will definitely need to make that bigger. So 2015, we can kind of see how it moved with the times. So in 1947, and I don't have a scale here, but you can see it was the highest in 1991, and it was that would be the safest. And then
Correct.
in 2015, it's actually it's getting close. Ed's a busy man.
He is.
No, it's a good thing.
So this isn't to say that we don't have any recourse. Obviously, there's several avenues by which this industry could fight back against what is obviously governmental overreach. One path is litigation, and there's already been at least one lawsuit filed by NicoPure Labs, otherwise known as Halo. And this was an excerpt from the press release regarding the NicoPure lawsuit, which was filed today. In his court filing, NicoPure Labs, who is not affiliated with any tobacco company, contends the FDA's rulemaking process violated the Administrative Procedure Act and that the deeming rule violates the First Amendment of the United States Constitution.
So you may be asking yourself, well, what are these violations? Here's what they are. The First Amendment to the United States Constitution, it covers a wide variety of things. But what this particular lawsuit is getting at is it is prohibiting the petitioning for a governmental redress of grievances. Now, the other things under the First Amendment are things like establishment of a religion, free exercise of religion, and freedom of speech. But particularly, and this is what I believe, it is petitioning for a governmental redress of grievances. And the First Amendment is very old. I mean, it was adopted on December 15th of 1791 as one of the 10 amendments that constitute the Bill of Rights. Now, the Administrative Procedure Act was enacted June 11th, 1946, and it's a United States federal statute that governs the way in which administrative agencies of the federal government, i.e. the FDA, of the United States may propose and establish regulations. The APA also sets up a process for the United States federal courts to directly review agency decisions. Now, that's important because that's important taking it to the courts and having it redone under an injunction lawsuit such as this. It's one of the most important pieces of United States administrative law. And again, that act became law in 1946.
Yeah, in my mind, the most expedient method would be to seek preliminary injunction against the FDA. I'm not sure what the newly formed coalition of SFATA, CASA, AIMSA, NBS, and AVA has in mind, but I think this may be what they're seeking. And to that point, let me go ahead and pull this up. This was the announcement, which I believe was yesterday. Was that yesterday? It's all blending together, folks.
Yeah, it's true.
Today, CASA, SFATA, AIMSA, AVA, and NBS have formally announced, I got to make this bigger, I can't read it, their coalition to pursue legal and legislative strategies now that the FDA's final deeming regulations have been released. The coalition will continue working to determine the correct litigation strategy and legislative actions. We will be informing the vapor industry and community of next steps, deadlines, PR objectives, and grassroots efforts. Organizations interested in participating should contact coalition partners. So that's an interesting development, and that's something that we did need to see happen, a coalition. So I'm glad to see that. Pooling resources and making sure that everybody's on the same page is something that's very important at this juncture.
Yes.
The other route, which is something that we as end users can actively support, is a change of the predicate date. The date referenced in the current FDA regulations is February 15th of 2007. Through either H.R. 2058, the Cole Bill, or the bipartisan-supported Cole-Bishop Amendment, and it's specific to a section, so you have to remember this. That's an agriculture bill. So Cole-Bishop Amendment H.R. 5054, but Section 761 is the important part. It's the part that you want to see passed along with H.R. 5054. If 5054 passes without Section 761, there's not going to be a predicate date change.
Correct.
So that would change the predicate date to, I believe it's today's date, since it's entered into the Federal Register today.
Correct.
And that would mean more products would be grandfathered into the market. So
Okay.
when we're... Go ahead.
Yep. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, you go.
Okay.
I insist.
Well, one thing
Somebody
here,
go.
One thing here I cannot stress enough is for people that are watching this broadcast to include extended family and non-vaping friends and family into this discussion and urge them to contact their representatives as well. We'll need every resource when combating these regulations, and really all are welcome to help here. Too many times, especially in this industry, what we are most guilty of is preaching to the proverbial choir about this industry's issues, and it rarely sends a ripple past the immediate consumers and businesses of this industry. So get people involved. Get people you know involved. Get your loved ones involved. Have them contact their representatives as well. And then we can start to see the ripple effect going outward here, as opposed to just being contained in this industry, because a lot of our arguments are really well contained within the box of the vaping industry, and it doesn't get out of here very often because there are still far too many politicians who don't know what vaping truly is and does, and they need to learn.
Amen and amen. So let's talk about a little bit of a high-level view. What does the predicate date mean for the industry? Basically, as it stands now, on April 8th of 2018, all current products on the market, including atomizers, mods, tanks, batteries, drip tips, software for controlling said devices, and e-liquids, as well as a plethora of other things, would be pulled from the market and no longer allowed to be sold. The exception to this is devices that were available on the market prior to 2007. So what are you left with? Ruyan e-cig. So I believe
kudos for finding that image. I don't even know where you found that, because I didn't even remember that thing until you showed me.
Will we get to drink from cloth coffee cups too?
Is that what that is?
Ceremonial tea along with your e-cig?
That was the first teabag mod.
That's where RY4 came from. Wasn't that from Ruyan or Ruyan?
Yeah.
I can't even pronounce it.
Ruyan?
Yeah, Ruyan. So that was Hong Lick's company, wasn't it?
Yes, correct.
Wasn't he the founder of that?
Heimlich,
So I think on that, at that point, they had like a cigar product and they had the little cigar-like product, but there were very few products on the market. And, the FDA obviously has a process. If you can prove there was something else on the market prior to 2007, you're welcome to bring it forward and they will add it to the list of devices that they know about. But as far as I know, this is the only one.
Well, I could tell them that I was vaping on a toaster with a gallon of EG in 2005. So
those were those stovetop coils, right? That was before it was in style.
Yeah.
coils.
That's some wattage. That's some wattage right there.
And
That's
toast.
Jay. That's UL approved, so you're all right.
Yeah, you're all right. It's UL approved. You can put that on the label. It'll help to sell it.
Wait until we get into the labeling, because that's really ludicrous.
Yeah, that blew our
okay, I'll
minds
wait.
today. Yeah, it
I'll
did.
wait.
That blew our minds big time.
Yeah. So the only other way to get a modern product on the market, okay, unless we change that predicate date. So we're talking about a product that we're currently enjoying and using, like, let's say the AIO, okay? You'd have to go through the FDA's PMTA, that is pre-market tobacco application process. And this is where it gets crazy. The PMTA process is extremely expensive, both for the initial application and the filing costs. So you're talking about in excess of $300,000 per SKU in filing cost. Plus applicable testing for, this is what they call HPHCs, harmful and potentially harmful constituents. So those are all the things that we're familiar with, like acrolein and additional
Correct.
compounds that are byproducts. So that costs a minimum of $1 million, okay? But it can easily soar up to $3 million per SKU. Now, when we're saying SKU, we're defining SKU as an individual component. Let's take a look at the regulated components breakdown. This is where it gets really ridiculous.
Sure does.
And look, I'm not saying that this is all doom and gloom, because we do have avenues, but you need to realize how horrible this legislation
Right.
is, or this.
What we're
this-
attempting to
these
do here
guidelines
is
are.
to discuss the weight of this
Yeah.
subject and really impart to you the weight of these regulations.
Yeah. So here is, let me see if I can make this bigger. Here are the components that they are defining as a tobacco product. Okay. And you can see here, I need to make this bigger for myself because I cannot. Man, my eyes. Tell you what.
Can somebody get that man some reading
I
glasses?
made
My
mine
palms
bigger
are
for
hairy
Jay.
too. I don't know why that happens. So you have here a cartomizer, a battery, cartridge atomizer battery. You have clearmizer drip tip, atomizer. All these things are defined as tobacco products. In addition to other items here, so we can see we have e-liquids, a glass or plastic vial container of e-liquid, cartridges, atomizers, certain batteries, cartomizers and clearmizers, digital displays or lights to adjust settings, tank systems, drip tips, flavoring for ends, and programmable software. So this means, okay, if you have a drip tip, it is considered a tobacco product. That's unbelievable to me.
Yep. And remember, one of the most important things to remember once we get back to that is HPHCs. Remember that. Harmful and potentially harmful constituents. That's a very key fact here.
So if you look here,
I think that Vapor Joe is a potentially harmful constituent.
I agree. You should have to go through the regulation process. So now I lost my train of thought. Damn it. Okay, so let's take a look at the SKUs now. So we have an Ego AIO. Okay. For example, this has a coil head, a tank, a battery, a display. Well, this actually doesn't have a display. It has a button that functions and lights up. But that's going to be incredibly cost prohibitive because each one of these components has to be certified. So let's take a look at e-liquids. A SKU for a bottle of e-liquid with a specific nicotine concentration, it would be for a specific nicotine concentration. If, for example, you offer that e-liquid in 3 milligram, 6 milligram, and 12 milligram, that would be 3 separate SKUs for one individual flavor. The craziest part, Dane, is if at any time after gaining approval for that e-liquid you change one of the constituent components, so that could be the mix of PG/VG, the brand of the flavor that you use, the concentration of the flavor that you use. Let's say a flavor vendor no longer offers a flavor that you use. You now need to go through a reset and submit a PMTA again.
All over again.
Yeah. And if we go back to this screen here, again, a glass or plastic vial container of e-liquid. So even your bottle is subject to that. So if a bottle is specifically designed for e-liquid, it too must go through the PMTA process. Kind of crazy.
Yeah,
Stainless steel
it's
flask.
unbelievable. So if you have a line where you have it both in 50-50 blends, and we're talking about one flavor, one nicotine concentration here. You have one flavor, one nicotine concentration that you have in max VG, that you have in low VG, and that you have in maybe a 60-40 or 70-30 PG to VG ratio. Those are all separate SKUs, and all of them have to go through the PMTA process, every single one of them.
And here's an example of why this costs so much for testing, because you remember when we do our GCMS testing, we're testing for specific things. Here is a list. Can I do this? Screen capture. Here we go. Here is a list of the compounds that they're looking for. So we have acetaldehyde, acetamide, acetone, acrolein, ammonia. We have all of these different things that have to be tested for.
Now,
This is
one
a
of
pretty
my
long
questions here,
list.
and I don't mean to interrupt you, but one of my questions here to the FDA and the Mitch Zeller is if we are testing as a manufacturer for these compounds, where is the baseline that our product must be within in order to be approved during the PMTA process, right? We have no baseline. What we don't have is a set of standards for e-liquid that is standard for the industry. Those do not exist. So to me, this is one of the most convoluted parts of this entire PMTA process, because without a set of standards, there is absolutely nothing to compare a product to, let alone a grandfather date of 2007. So unless a set of standards comes forward, this is going to be a very tricky process to pass through the PMTA.
It's a crapshoot. Because you submit an e-liquid, and it's you don't know what the levels are going into that testing phase as to what they're actually looking for, because they're not looking for anything. Frankly, they're looking for a relative value, and they'll probably end up passing, the bottom 2%. That don't cross those values. It's disgusting. It's they'll leak out baseline values to their friends, and they'll ignore their enemies. So you're shooting at a blind target. They're setting up a target. They're setting up a target 300 yards away, and they're blacking out the bullseye.
So here's a question I got. Has any other tobacco product went through this and gotten approved?
Supposedly
I believe
there's one.
Yes.
There's one.
And that's what I was just about to say. There is one. I have no idea what that is, but apparently there is one. Also, according to the FDA, from their mouths, is that there is currently no backlog and no pending PMTA applications at this time.
So, and here's my point I was getting at. If there was just one tobacco product, be it Camel Snus, be it another brand of cigarette, be it anything else, there is no way that this bottle of e-liquid is going to have anything near the values and concentrate or ingredients of what was in that. So every damn thing we have should pass with flying colors. But will it?
Well, and that's the real question, isn't it? And James and I had talked about this during pre-show, and I asked him the question, what are the odds of you getting a PMTA approval anyway? Because if you have a bubblegum flavor, and it's not listed as bubblegum, it's say in a fruity, Rooty Tooty Fresh and Fruity, let's call it that, and there's bubblegum in there, and that one passes. But then you put another SKU on the line, and it's straight bubblegum, and let's just say for grins, we'll call it Bubble Yum to make it easy for me. We'll call it Bubble Yum. Immediately a red flag comes up without any testing yet, mind you. They'll say, oh, well, this markets the kids. This PMTA is denied, your money is taken, and it's over, and it's finished with. And that SKU never sees the light of day. So there's going to be a lot of gray areas here, and there's going to be a lot of treacherous swimming around some of these regulations, because I believe you're going to see a lot of disparity between what's passed and what isn't passed, and the chasm in between is going to be large. And what's going to happen is you're going to get people who are going after each other and the FDA as a whole, be like, how come that guy got his passed and his is far worse than mine, but yet I can't get mine passed? There's going to be so many problems with this process along the way, and we'll get to the process in a little while in this show. Currently, it looks to be estimated at about a year from when your PMTA is accepted until it's approved. That is absolute fallacy as far as I'm concerned. There is no way that a federal government entity can do anything in a year, let alone something this specific and scientific. It boggles my mind.
I'm going to respond to a question that Ed Wolf posted in chat a while back. He wanted to know if that HPHC list was for tobacco smoke and tobacco products. It is, but that's the one that's linked from the FDA's guidelines for tobacco products, aka Ns. So I don't know. That's the way it looks like the testing is going to have to go. And we already know they want to see what levels of carcinogens are in the product. But again, what's the principal rule of toxicology? The dose makes the poison.
The dose makes the poison, correct.
So, how can we adhere to something that, like Bruce said in chat, is a moving target? So there's a lot of questions. There aren't a lot of answers right now. This is kind of a look into how things would be if this goes through, but we still have to be prepared, because there are things that we're going to have to do within 3 months. Mm-hmm. Things that are going to be enforced within 3 months. So let's move on here in the doc. And I believe, Dane, you were going to talk a little bit about the manufacturing and testing requirements.
Yeah. All right, here we go. If you're a manufacturer and you manufacture ENDS, God, I hate that name. Electronic Nicotine Delivery System. I can't stand that acronym. I hate it. These are some of the requirements that apply to you. 1. Submit an application and obtain FDA authorization to market a new tobacco product. For timelines and details, please see the deeming tobacco products to be subject to the FDA Food and Cosmetic Act, blah, blah, blah. And we'll get to those too. Register your establishment and submit product listing to the FDA by December 31st, 2016. I'll say that date again. That's December 31st, 2016. Now, this only currently applies to domestic manufacturers. We're getting into a lot of gray areas about China here, and I won't even discuss China yet, because everybody knows in this particular broadcast how much I loathe China, but I loathe them even more now. Submit a listing of ingredients. Submit information on harmful and potentially harmful constituents. There's those HPHCs again. Submit tobacco health documents. This is so incredibly vague, and I'm not even sure that a lot of these exist yet. Next, do not introduce into interstate commerce modified risk tobacco products, such as products with labeling or advertising representing that they reduce risk or less harmful compared to other tobacco products on the market without an FDA order. So what that essentially says is that you cannot say that they are safer or 95% safer, or this is a healthier alternative to smoking. You cannot say any of those things anymore. Next, manufacture your tobacco product with a required warning statement on packaging and advertisements. Those labeling requirements are a joke, and we'll get to those in a bit. Next, market your tobacco product in compliance with other applicable statutory requirements, rules, and regulations. What that is legal speak for saying, if we choose to change this at any time and we don't tell you, it's your responsibility to look up and see what those are and stay within the guidelines of those requirements that constantly keep moving.
Vape shops that mix e-liquid for customers.
Gone.
They would now be considered both a tobacco product manufacturer and a retailer of tobacco products. So they're still subject to the PMTA process, plus they're subject to, having a proper site for mixing of said tobacco products, etc. So there's a whole new set of guidelines and machinations that you would have to go through if you wanted to mix e-liquid in the back after this date. If you did, I have no idea why you'd pursue that course of action. It's just not. It's not even feasible. I don't think they'll get anybody.
No,
I don't think they'll get anybody. Not even the big shops that currently do this and have 10 or 15 locations or locations nationwide. So house juice, that's a thing of the past if this goes to fruition. Labeling requirements. Now this is crazy. Once again, these labels must be in place by August 8th, 2018. Dane, you and I both discussed the conflicting information present in the section of the regulations regarding labeling. If it's a product containing nicotine, it must contain the following verbiage. And let me get this. Oh, man. I'll tell you what. I am not organized today at all. I know I have something that's for labeling.
It's the deeming regs' fault. It's because they're not organized either. It jumps all over the place. It's enough to drive you batshit crazy. It really is.
I know I have it here. Nicotine warning statement. Here it is. I believe this is it. Yep, this is it. Just put it right up here on the screen. Cover everybody's faces. This product contains nicotine. Nicotine is an addictive chemical. Okay. I'm not going to argue with that. I see that warning on my snooze. If the tobacco product manufacturer submits a self-certification statement to the FDA. Now, this is important because this would normally be the approach that you'd want to take if you wanted to sell zero nicotine juice after that August date. If the tobacco product manufacturer submits a self-certification statement to the FDA that the newly regulated tobacco product does not contain nicotine and that the manufacturer has data to support this assertion, then an alternate statement must be used on product packages and advertisements. This product is made from tobacco.
Yep.
So
you're not hearing him wrong. That is absolutely true.
If your product has no tobacco derivatives, it must be labeled as
it must be made from tobacco.
This product is made from tobacco. Yeah.
So it almost behooves an e-liquid manufacturer to just use the initial warning.
Yeah.
Across the board.
But you probably can't. If you have zero nicotine, you have to advertise it as such. So if you're advertising it as nicotine, I don't know. They're so vague on this. But then again, look at this. We go back to this. These are all considered tobacco products, these components. Right. So does that mean your drip tip needs to say that it is made from tobacco?
It's those HPHCs, man.
I don't know. I don't understand this at all. If somebody has clarification on that, I'd love to see it. But they define tobacco product pretty clearly, and it is any of those constituent components. So, Dane, what do you think of this? I mean,
this is a real head scratcher to me, to say the least. When I read this, there's no logic behind this point whatsoever, and I'm not sure how the FDA can even justify saying that an e-liquid, which is flavor and vegetable glycerin and or propylene glycol, with a 0% nicotine content, can be made from tobacco. It's a joke. It's fraud. It's a joke. It is an absolute joke. I thought that this was an Onion article. It's a joke.
Yeah,
that's impossible to me.
How do you test a drip tip for HPHCs?
That's a really good question. That's a really good question. Molecular? I don't know. How do you test? And how much does it cost?
Yeah, and Jay, you can't use eScribe. If you have a DNA 200, you can't use eScribe unless it goes through a PMTA process, because that's a piece
correct.
of software.
The software is a tobacco product. So now what if I, as a software developer, what if I were to start developing enterprise software for e-liquid manufacturers? You know, to manage their inventory, manage nicotine, you know, all that stuff. Is that now the tobacco product?
That's a good question. That's a very good question.
Yeah.
I think the DIYers are going to have to start a GoFundMe for the makers of Juice Me Up, because they're probably going to have to apply too.
That's a tobacco product now? Yeah.
It's a tobacco product.
Wow. Yeah, it's like I have a little example here, and it's a bit extreme, but I was using it earlier. This is Italian parsley, right? Yeah, it is. That's Italian parsley right there. Let me move that into the camera.
No,
that's Italian parsley.
According to the FDA, that's lasagna.
If I put this Italian parsley in this tank, this Italian parsley ceases to be Italian parsley and becomes tobacco. There we go. That's how ridiculous you are, Mitch Zeller. That is how ridiculous you have become. You are a caricature of a joke, of a legislative attempt at being anything. This is a joke. It's an absolute joke.
All right. So SFATA has a document that talks about the different important dates to remember here. And I'm going to pull that up. Once again, I wish I would have organized all these. And next steps, here we go. This should be it. Maybe. Maybe not. Now I can't find it.
No, it's lost in the FDA quagmire of stuff.
It's gone enough. Here we go. As soon as I say that, I find it. Key dates for vapor businesses.
Yes. So we're looking at here. It appears the new product clock starts here at August 8, 2016, for manufacturers to gain PMTA approval for products in the industry. A key point here is that the FDA has the sole right to deny or accept any new product being brought to market that hasn't gained substantial equivalence. Now, substantial equivalence is that grandfather date of February 2007, and it's based upon that 2007 date, which is currently set, which is why it is so important to change that date.
All right, so what is going to affect us in 90 days? My understanding is that when President Obama signed the Family Smoking Prevention Act, it works in conjunction with the classification of the aforementioned vapor products. Excuse me.
Bless you.
It would mean that the most immediate effect would be the way products are shipped to end users. So if you order from Joe Blow's e-cigs, they will now be required to ship via a trackable adult signature required form of shipping. So FedEx, UPS, things like that. Yep. No more bulk bubble mailers and reasonable $4 or $5 shipping rates. What you are in effect receiving is no different than if you ordered cigars, pipe tobacco, or snus via mail. Angela says she's confused in chat. I don't know. Maybe she can... Oh, she's talking about something else. Dane, you and I are all...
Commentary. I'm confused.
You and I are already familiar with the PACT Act, and Jay, so are you. The PACT Act,
Yep.
which regulates the way snus is allowed to be shipped. Its impact on shipping costs with snus, the average shipping cost for snus is right around $30. I mean, what's the least you've had to pay, Jay, for a snus shipment?
The least is probably $25.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say the same thing.
So obviously, domestic adult signature required shipping rates will be lower, but it's not going to be anywhere near as affordable as it's been up until now. So I'm thinking it'll probably cost what, like $10 to $12. I mean, I guess if you're a bulk shipper, you have a shipping account, it's going to be a little bit more reasonable. But
Yeah, I don't think that's really where the problem's going to be. The problem is going to be that people have to be home to sign.
right, yeah.
That's
Adult signature required.
Yeah.
The other thing that goes along with that is there's going to be a freeze on new products. So that's going to become official in under 90 days at this point. So the
Amanda
clock's
wants to
ticking
hear
on
the
that.
mail part again.
The mail.
Yeah, about shipping, the PACT Act.
Oh, yeah. It's the PAC Act basically requires an adult signature for packages containing tobacco products.
Correct.
And we're only familiar with it because of snus, but it appears that something similar is going to be enforced for vapor products in 90 days.
Yes.
So the freeze on new products, what does that mean? Specifically on August 8th, 2016, there's going to be a freeze on any products produced after that if they don't have a PMTA in process with the FDA. So I guess that basically,
The way I understand it, they don't necessarily have to have a PMTA in process, but they have to be registered. They have to have already been registered with the FDA as a product that may have a PMTA to be submitted.
Right.
So prior to the August 8th date, they have to be registered and have all their SKUs registered with the FDA. So basically, it's each individual company is basically saying, "Hello, FDA, here I am," and we'll see where we go from here.
now see, Azim posted this today. This was just regarding e-liquids on the market. So those you have 2 years on.
Right.
8/8/16 sold until PMTA deadline of 8/8/18.
Right. And what we don't know is how do we first of all prove to the FDA that these e-liquids were on the market above and beyond just that hello handshake, here I am, FDA. And also how do we know once we've made that handshake whether or not a particular e-liquid is eligible?
Yep.
And that I can't answer, but this is an even more clear indication of what I was talking about with a market freeze, because this is another tweet from him. Also, no new products can be sold after 8/8/16, so that's again 3 months, without first submitting PMTA and getting at FDA tobacco marketing authorization. So you need to be in the process in order to sell.
Right, but they don't know whether or not you're in the process until you've submitted. So we have a 2-year window to submit, but obviously nobody is going to be in a position to submit for PMTA prior to 8/8. I mean, it takes years, just to get to that point. So where does that leave us? What are we supposed to do?
My understanding is they're probably going to use that as a hard date to start seizing shipments, because they've already done that in the past.
Right.
Shipments from China.
2009 was it?
Yeah.
And that's what I've been saying all along. To this point, when they were seizing shipments, what was it in early 2011, or even earlier than that? When they started seizing shipments, it was because they were deeming vaping products as medical devices or drug devices. The court said you can't do that. Maybe you can look at tobacco. So the FDA is now saying, okay, they're tobacco. Now we're going to seize them because they're tobacco. under essentially the same pretense, the same exact pretense.
They have to. It gives them authority over it because they've regulated all of these components as tobacco.
Right.
Somebody in chat brought up a good point. He says that, this is Oi Vapor, if you file PMTA after August 8th, you will not be allowed to sell your product while the application is in process. So it would have to be
And if you
clear.
file before August 8th, you will be allowed to sell your products
Yeah.
while the application is in process. Right.
Yeah. So basically, you'd have to start that filing process before the August 8th date on new products. I'm completely befuddled by this.
Yeah,
It doesn't make any
it gets
sense.
worse.
Do we have a 2 grace period, or do we not? That's what that boils down to.
Yeah.
You know, do I have to? How do I tell them that I'm now beginning to file a PMTA process? How do I tell them that? I just say, yes. You know, what do I do? What do I do?
Yeah.
Present.
Here, present. You know, what do you do as an e-liquid or an RDA manufacturer or a mechanical mod manufacturer? How do you make that process,
Yeah.
you know, legitimate?
Call the 877 number.
And it'll be escalated to level 2, and they'll call you
Yes.
back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, we should probably mention we have no phones tonight. If anybody
Yes,
hasn't
we do
figured
not.
that out.
We do
by
not
me
have phones.
trying to get in touch with the British lady and failing.
But we have phones. You just can't call them.
Yeah, we have phones. Kevin had an excellent Q&A session with Dr. Michael Siegel today, and the replay is up on VP Live. So if you take a look, you can find it, but Dr. Siegel answered a lot of questions that people had, and that used up our phone spot for the day, which is not a problem because, you know, we're easygoing.
And if you go on Pornhub, he also had a B&M with him as well. So.
Yikes.
Oh, good Lord.
Yikes.
Yeah.
Well, moving on. Here's another important date. August 8th, 2018. This is the date that all PMTA applications are due. This is a kind of pivotal date here in this process, as this is when the FDA begins the finalization on vapor products being introduced that are not substantial equivalents. Why is this pivotal? If your product is not on the market as of this date, you, the manufacturer, just have 1 year left on your PMTA application submittal. So that's starting to cut it close. That's kind of like the final countdown. That's kind of it right there. All right, next date is August 8th, 2019. I'll sing again. This is the end, my only friend, the end. No, really, it is. It's the end. According to the FDA, anyway. Now, 3 years after the effective date, all products on the market must either be grandfathered in via substantial equivalent or have been approved via successful FDA PMT application. And if indeed your product has been approved and is now on the market at this time, congratulations, Vapor Store. There will be absolutely no competition for your product, and you are sure to be one of the most successful vaping industry companies in history. Sarcasm intended on that last statement, as this will most likely never happen.
Yeah. Yep. Let's talk a little bit about flavoring for DIY too, because I talked to a friend of mine and he's very well versed in this subject. Most of the flavoring companies that cater to DIY purchase their flavorings from other companies in bulk and then rebottle it into smaller quantities for retail sale. When they do that with a product that is reasonably expected, and again, when we use these terms like reasonably expected, those are terms that come up quite often in the FDA's guidelines.
Inferred and reasonably expected.
Yeah, inferred is the other one.
Used a lot.
Yep. When they do that with a product that is reasonably expected to be used in an e-liquid, it becomes yet another item which would be required to go through that PMTA process as flavoring for ends. So there you go with another PMTA for the flavoring. So that's where you're going to have a trouble, DIYers. I mean, obviously, you can get your nicotine in bulk, and you freeze it, you store it properly, you can enjoy it for years. But flavoring could be an issue. Of course, you have food safe GRAS flavoring. We haven't even really touched on the black market this is going to create. Obviously, it is going to create one if it's allowed to go unopposed. It's not going to go unopposed, though. And that's the thing to stress here. There's watchdog organizations, there's advocacy groups, and there are trade organizations. And trade organizations are the ones that should have the primary focus here, because I heard a shocking number today, which is that 70% of e-liquid manufacturers and retail brick and mortar stores and online are not a member of a trade organization at this point. 70%.
Yep.
So,
that is a staggering number in this day and age, knowing that these regulations were coming down.
Yeah.
It's staggering.
And I would say, regardless of what trade organization you would choose to support, whether it be SFATA or the VTA or one of the smaller chapters, regional chapters of a smokeless or a smoke-free organization. Yeah. So you need to get involved. From the vendor's side, you need to get involved and protect your interests, because quite honestly, especially if you haven't secured you don't have a lawyer on retainer, this is quite overwhelming to deal with. And let's face it, the majority of people that I know who are now e-liquid manufacturers, a lot of them did not have a business background before they got into this.
That's a fact.
Yeah, Jay, you're raising your hand. So, you've got a good palate. You were able to come up with some very good flavors and combinations.
I fought going into business tooth and nail. It really wasn't until I saw a need in my region here in New England before I even thought about going into this full time. It wasn't until I felt that I could both do e-liquid manufacturing and help to draw advocacy and focus advocacy in this region before I decided to go full time doing this.
So Rodney is in chat and he's saying, why should they be? Consumers will pay for you to stay in business. Okay, so there's going to be two approaches here. There's going to be the people who are in this for the foreseeable future, and then they're out. Okay, and that's fine. If that's how you want to be, that's fine. You're in it until you can't be in it anymore without having some sort of a process with the FDA, or unless somebody else does all the dirty work for you. And that's if that's the way you want to run your business, fine. But the reality is, on their own, a small shop is not going to have the financial resources to pursue or have someone pursue on their behalf. Unless they join a trade organization, how are they going to end up being able to do this? Because these trade organizations are going to...
They won't.
Yeah. I mean...
there's absolutely no way they won't. And don't think for a minute. I'm only going to touch on this briefly, only because I'm a member of this group. There is a pipe smokers group on Facebook, and they have been talking about these regulations as well. Don't think for a minute that these FDA regulations haven't rippled into other ancillary businesses and other ancillary markets and other places, even tobacco as well. Those pipe guys are up in arms. They're up in arms about the ability to get their tobacco products to use for their pipes and how this is going to change, how the pre-market application exists for them. Because let's face it, in the new hipster age of things, smoking a pipe now is actually cool again. And what those hipsters are doing is going into business for themselves and making new blends of tobacco for said pipers. And what's happening is that all of those blends, now very well received, will have to be eradicated off of the market completely. And that wipes out a very large market section of their business. So there are other people who, while not in the same business and industry that we are very, very interested in the outcome because it directly affects their bottom lines as well. I am not one of those people who is not opposed to being hand in hand with other ancillary industries to help fight this, because in my opinion, we need everyone together. And that includes businesses, individuals, consumer groups, consumer advocates, tobacco industry, pro-tobacco industry, that is not anti, but pro-tobacco industry, anyone we can get that has resources, litigators, and whatever else at their disposal to help with this fight, we need it. And we need it now.
So
yes, cigar makers are also being affected. That is absolutely correct. And the cigar lobby in Washington is enormous. Please don't underestimate the cigar lobby. It is one of the biggest in Washington. And the fat cats up on the hill do not want to lose their Macanudos and Cohibas. They do not.
And that's one thing that we have going for us is that the cigar regulation has been folded in with the e-cig regulations. So we have a huge lobby that is banding together and fighting against this blanket regulation, and we could absolutely lean on their strength to make the entire thing fall. Simply because they're fighting against a product category that, while it has nothing to do with electronic cigarettes, it can absolutely be the downfall of this regulation as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
Jay, did you flatten the brim of your hat?
All he needs now is a
ridiculous.
handlebar mustache.
It was by request.
Damn it. Now I'm wearing mine.
Yeah, I don't think I can't flatten this one even if I tried.
All right, I'll put it back. I'm sorry.
Thank you. It's distracting.
And there was a point in chat. Small business specialty cigars are getting thrown under the bus too. Yeah, that is absolutely true. Rodney again made a point. The small shops. What do you say? Small shops aren't in trouble. Only the manufacturer's retail is safe. Taking that blinders on your head approach is insane, because what those retailers need to ask themselves is, who are my manufacturers? Where am I getting my products from? And are they going to be able to continue to fulfill my orders every month? And if they don't, retail isn't safe, because it's one thing to sell a vapor product. It's another thing of not having product to sell.
Here's an interesting thing. I do business with a lot of tobacco retailers, and I've been in conversation with them about these specific regulations. And part of these regulations is that cigars can no longer have flavors, right?
Correct.
Right. The cigar manufacturers have been aware of this to this point. So what they've been doing leading up to this is simply removing the characterization of their specific products that they contain specific flavors. So no longer are they saying there's a strawberry flavor in here. No, now they're just putting a red band around that cigar. So that's an important distinction, because much of what the FDA does, or much of what they regulate, has to do with marketing. Now we need to define marketing. Marketing is like just trying to portray to the public what something tastes like, what something feels like, this and that. It has nothing to do with the actual ingredient in the product. So perhaps we can maneuver around in a similar fashion to get e-liquids and hardware to
spit it out, Jay. Spit it out.
Yeah. I need to flatten my brim again.
You should have worn a brimless.
Tighten up the snapback on that hat a little bit.
There we go.
It's a Patriots hat. Maybe that's what's wrong.
Oh, no, stop that! You know better.
When you bring up cigars, this is how the FDA works. It's all centered around marketing. If you market a metal tube as a gardening tool, then it's a gardening tool. If you market that same metal tube as a vaping device, now it's a vaping device. That's my point. Does that make sense?
James and I had this little skit planned as well, and I'm going to touch on China really fast, because Some people were asking me earlier about China. James is going to play the vape industry here, and I am going to play the FDA because I am probably the biggest asshole of this group, so I get to play the bad guy. Good morning, Mr. Martin. Why are you here today in my chambers? What are you doing here?
I don't know, because I forgot the skit.
He did. He totally forgot. Well, what I'm going to say is that, the vapor industry, there are all of these products that have been coming from China. We're a very big industry. We're $3 billion a year. And I foresee the FDA, because I have been asked this by a legislator before, and I'm going to regurgitate exactly what he asked me. Okay, Dane, that's great. $3 billion a year. Let's just keep it at that, not at the growth that it's expected to be in this coming year. It's $3 billion right now. How much of the percentage of your market is from China? I don't know. A lot. Define a lot. Let's call it 50%. Okay, 50% of $3 billion is $1.5 billion. That's great, Dane. It's $1.5 billion. How much of that money from China is being reintroduced into the U.S. economy via taxes, brick and mortar rents, payroll for employees, all of those things? How much is being reinvested back into the U.S. economy, Dane? I don't know. Probably none. Okay, that's my point. Have a good day. That's part of the issue here. And whether we want to admit that or not, it's going to become an issue sooner or later. The deeming regs are one thing to regulate this country. They haven't even touched on China yet, but they will. They will. It's just a matter of time.
Just touching on what Rod had said before about not seeing the need to join a trade organization, I don't necessarily agree with that, because if you look at it, how are some of these small shops, some of the larger companies have the money to keep a lobbyist on retainer or to have lawyers on retainer. There are companies out there that do that.
Yes.
Conglomerates in some cases that own multiple labels and different types of products within the vapor industry. But how are you going to get that type of organization for your small to medium-sized business? I mean, unless you have pretty big cash flow coming in, how are you going to do it? You have a lobbyist? Maybe at a state level you do. This is a bigger fight. Why do you think there's a coalition? Why do you think that there are multiple groups that have joined forces? Because this is an obvious cause. We now know who the target is. And that brings us back to what was on the image here, the quote from Sun Tzu. And it's very pertinent to this situation. If you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. If you know yourself but not the enemy, for every victory gained, you will also suffer a defeat. And that's what we've been seeing. Think about the fights that we've had on a state-by-state basis. It's a moving target. We don't know our enemy. We've had these bans come up, and they're localized. And yeah, sometimes at a local level with the proper education or the proper organization, they can defeat these bills. But now we know who the enemy is. Now we know what our target needs to be. And we know ourselves. Or at least we're getting to that point where I think we should know ourselves. If you know neither the enemy nor yourself, you will succumb in every battle. So that's kind of an important point to take away from this too.
Right. Tony made a point in chat. When you take account the markup of U.S. retailers, 100% of that 1.5 mil is reintroduced. In a perfect world, yes, it is. In a perfect world. But we both know that this industry is not a perfect world. And someone else says, Dentman says, China is not the bad guy here. Look, I agree. China isn't the bad guy here. They're simply fulfilling a need. But I will say this. If I am a U.S. business and I am being regulated the way the FDA is regulating now, I want China regulated the same way too. I want a level playing field across the board.
Okay, I agree with Nick. Nick says these regs have more to do with the manufacturer than the retailers. Retailers have 2 to 3 years to adjust their business plans. Manufacturers have 90 days. Again, with the exception being the people that mix juice in the back, because, again, they're considered manufacturers of a tobacco product if they do that. So that's an obvious go away. But Rodney made the point, it's the producers that will need legal representation. Retail stores aren't in need of legal representation. That's not necessarily true, because you have to remember that these groups on a local level and a state level, they are also supporting efforts to make sure that laws like the one that is being proposed in New Jersey right now? Is it New Jersey or New York with the flavor ban?
Flavor ban is in New Jersey, yeah.
Yeah, flavor ban in New Jersey. So again, I guess I really don't understand it. Like, I'm a consumer and I donate to Hoosier Vapors. Why? Because they keep me informed. Should the onus be primarily on businesses? Yeah, probably. But as a consumer, it's something that I want to do because I like what they're doing for me, what they're doing for the state on a local level. So, I guess that's a personal decision when it comes down to it.
It is.
We're not going to belabor
I think a lot of state agencies, and I actually had this conversation with Nick. I'm the vice president of Mass Smoke Free. Nick is on the board of directors of the same exact organization. A lot of these state organizations are going to have to make a decision in the coming weeks as to whether or not we should, either disband or change the charter to help focus resources on the federal fight. Because for a lot of the state organizations, the federal fight has now just become much more important and a much more impending doom. New Jersey being an exception because they're facing a flavor ban, which essentially just results in an all-out ban, much in the way that the federal ban would manifest. So these are all decisions that we're going to have to make in the coming weeks. And flat brim or not, we're gonna have to figure out what we want to do.
Yeah. Let me bring this up real quickly too, because this was for the retailer side. So these are the 90 day after publication. So we know today was a publication date. So here are some of the examples included. Not selling newly deemed covered tobacco products to anyone under the age of 18, requiring age verification by photo ID for anyone under the age of 27 attempting to purchase covered tobacco products. These first two are kind of no-brainers because we've already been doing these. I mean, just kind of generally accepted good practice and things that we're familiar with is, restrictions. Maybe you don't require a photo ID, but in 90 days you'll have to. Not selling covered tobacco products in vending machines. I have yet to see an e-cig vending machine. Have you seen one before, Jay?
The only time I've seen one was actually at a convention. It was at a convention, and they were selling the vending machines. I've never seen one out in the wild, ever.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't either.
Let's see. And the last one, not distributing free samples of newly deemed tobacco products. And this is actually kind of interesting. So let's talk a little bit about the sampling process. My understanding is that shops can no longer give out free samples of anything deemed a tobacco product. However, 0 milligram e-liquids can be sampled in shops, and a customer can sample juices containing nicotine if there is a transaction attached to the sampling. So, some of our friends that live in New England are familiar with the process. It's kind of like take a penny, leave a penny type thing. I'm not sure what specific shops do because I'm not from there. I don't know if, Jay, you can speak to it, but they charge you for sampling.
Well, in New England, it's kind of a special case because it's been enforced by the Attorney General in the state, in Massachusetts specifically, which is notorious for passing regulations and then not enforcing them. So Nobody, as far as I know, nobody's been dinged specifically for sampling. Some people charge a penny, some people charge $1 for a sampling experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's literally no case law at this point as to how that stuff ends up being handled.
And that's an interesting point about case law, because at the federal level in this industry, there really isn't either. And that's what makes this all the more confusing, because there is no statute to refer to. Mm-hmm. There's no baseline, there's no statute, there's no set of of any type of regulations or standards in the industry. And this, as new as this industry is, and at this point, I'm not even sure we can call ourselves new anymore, but I don't think the government itself knows how to regulate this industry, because they don't even know what it is.
No, they don't.
So are you saying, Dane, that they probably should have came up with like some type of okay, you're going to put your stuff in for testing. What are we going to accept?
Right. Whenever you have something tested for safety, let's just use that for safety. There needs to be a safety guideline of like, it cannot go from this low of a voltage to this high of a voltage. This section is acceptable. Between 3 and 8 is acceptable. 8 and above is too high. Below 3 is too low. Right? There are no provisions whatsoever like that about anything.
Yeah.
Ass backwards.
That's law. That's legislation. That's the name of the beast when it comes to this kind of stuff.
This is the definition of bad governing. It really is. The FDA deeming regs is the absolute definition of bad governing. They are legislating by ignorance.
But they're legislating, in their baseline in legislation is to legislate an industry that they feel can weather the storm. They're legislating with big tobacco and big pharma in mind, who are entities that can afford to handle the case law that's going to come down the pike. The fact that small business owners are going to fall away and disappear is a feature, not a bug. They don't want small businesses to exist in this industry. They want to be able to have a small handful of organizations that they can manipulate and control in their mind.
Well, that's a good point. And my question is wouldn't it behoove big tobacco to be a medium-sized fish in a big pond, as opposed to being the biggest fish in a little pond financially?
They're already used to that.
It would behoove them to be in a bigger market.
You look at how big tobacco has been homogenized, and they've bought up smaller companies already. I mean, how many big tobacco companies are there? I mean, the little guys are like Swedish Match and all these little independent producers, but as far as tobacco, cigarettes, combustible products, there's only a handful of them. I'm not talking about cigars.
Because of mergers and acquisitions.
Ask yourself this question. Why 3 years ago, instead of buying blue cigs, didn't somebody buy Pro Vape? Why? Because they knew that open systems were exactly the part of the industry that they were fighting against. They did not want open systems.
Let's think about this for a minute then. Given what we know about the constituent products involved in a full device based on the FDA's definition, would it be safe to assume that if this actually goes into effect, the devices that we would be seeing more of would be SIGA-like devices or closed systems? Because it seems to me that that's going to be simpler to present, something with an integrated drip tip and a sealed cartridge. It's definitely easier to test all the variables on something like that versus, let's say a box mod with an arbitrary coil setup and then you have no control over what type of e-liquid or what.
We've essentially come full circle. I mean, what you're saying is exactly how these regulations cater to the industry. They cater to closed systems. They cater to a small number of SKUs per company. Everything about this set of regulations caters to the big tobacco model. Everything about them. That's what they want to see. It's easier to control. It's a small number of corporations. It's a small number of products. It's closed systems. You don't have to worry about a whole bunch of different components. It takes that into account and wants to push that type of business model in lieu of open systems, e-liquid, drip tips, batteries, mechanical devices. It destroys that market. That's the inherent initiative of this regulation, is to destroy that wing of the market, and in its place, big tobacco steps in. Maybe something like the Juul can survive, maybe,
I
but
don't think so. Yeah.
But I mean, that's what they're shooting for. Yeah. That's the business model that they're shooting for. It's easier to control, plain and simple.
Well, that would be a bleak look at the future. Of course, there are alternatives. So I guess the question would be, who's the biggest loser in this whole thing? I mean,
me.
Small business.
Okay. All right.
Small business
from a financial from a financial perspective, that is true. Let's look at from a public health perspective. Okay. Everybody that's in this chat room is probably okay, right? I mean, we know how to get what we need.
True.
We can be discreet about it.
Yeah.
We can use back channels. We're no stranger to civil disobedience in some cases. So the biggest losers from a public health perspective are the smokers who are out there that are contently puffing away on their cigarettes, or maybe they're looking for an alternative. And I'm not talking about near term, because obviously, the two people that I talked to last week, they're fine. They're happy as clams with their new vaping setups, and they're, marveling in the technology. But 2-3 years from now, what's left? What are these people going to do at that point? They're going to have a handful of options at best, unless we succeed in changing the predicate date. Or they're going to have closed systems from big tobacco, which may be effective, but you know what? Maybe they don't want to vape whatever menthol and tobacco flavors end up getting approval, and they want something that's a little bit more pleasant or satisfying. Sure. And Jay, you can attest to this. What's the most interesting thing about how shitty Camel snus is compared to, snus from other countries? It's designed for a dual-use scenario. It gives you very little nicotine, and it's meant as a supplementary product. And what's to say that big tobacco doesn't take the same approach to keep people hooked?
And again, it's a design. It's a feature. It's not a bug. It's the same. Yes, it's absolutely the same with American style snus. It's not designed to take over cigarette smoking. It's designed to make cigarette smoking more convenient to people who find themselves unable to smoke in more and more places. That's it. And with electronic cigarettes and vaping, their model is going to be the same exact thing. They're not going to want a more effective vaping product. They're going to want something just effective enough to make it easy enough to keep people addicted to smoking. That's it.
Dane, let's cover this story really quickly because we're already running along here. But we do want to talk about this interview that Mitch Zeller did with, I'm going to search for a link again. This was Vox.com. And Julia Belluz did this interview with Mitch Zeller. And it's pretty interesting, some of the things that he had to say here. So this was question and answers with Mitch Zeller. This new regulation, this is Julia, this new regulation is a pretty big deal. What are the biggest immediate changes Americans can expect? Mitch responds, the main news here is that finally e-cigarettes, cigars, hookah, and pipes will be regulated by the FDA, which is a milestone in consumer protection. So again, this is his angle. Before he was talking about the fact that there was a continuum of risk and this could be beneficial to consumer health, and now he's talking about consumer protection. Congress told the agency, you're in the business of regulating tobacco products to reduce disease and death from tobacco, but the original grant of authority only covered cigarettes, cigarette tobacco, and roll-your-own tobacco, and smokeless tobacco. The most immediate change that's going to be seen in coming months is enforcing a prohibition that makes it illegal to sell these products to young people, again bringing up the youth. And he goes on to cite the 900% increase in youth use that everybody likes to champion about. And they never really get into the specifics about the subsets that the CDC interviewed, talking about the fact that 60% of that 16% that were using vapor products were using zero nicotine. Yep. But they like to talk about the fact that nicotine is so damaging to young minds and to young people in affecting the pleasure center of their brain and everything else. So it's just ridiculous. These are empty numbers that they just throw around.
And they make no differentiation between tried and use.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's true.
Yeah, because that's a very big definition. And it's something I don't think they pay very much attention to. And they consider the terms interchangeable and one and the same. If you tried it, you're a user.
Well, it doesn't help their argument if they say it.
No.
And then this is the other thing, and this is the one that pisses me off the most. What we don't know is, so she says, you've described how having to make the new tobacco regulations with insufficient scientific data about e-cigarettes. What are the biggest uncertainties in your view? So then he cites the 900% increase among high schoolers. He says that's a huge problem. But then he says, what we don't know is about dual use of both e-cigarettes and cigarettes. We know this is the figure that I don't understand. 70% of all adults who use e-cigarettes continue to smoke regular cigarettes. Where did that number come from?
Yeah.
Convenience stores. No doubt.
Did they talk to anyone else? I've never been asked. I've participated in several nicotine use studies. And I don't believe those studies have ever, been used in these channels. So where was that data pulled from? What we don't know at a population level is whether it's simply a transition away from cigarettes, which would be a benefit for public health. So there again, Mitch Zeller is saying this could be a benefit for public health, or dual use of both products leading to a diminished interest in quitting, which would have an adverse impact on public health. This is what I don't get. Jay, let's say you smoke 2 packs of cigarettes a day.
Yeah.
Now you pick up a vape, and
heroin.
Suddenly you find, or heroin, and suddenly you find that instead of smoking 2 packs of cigarettes a day, now you're only smoking maybe 5 or 6 cigarettes, and you're vaping the rest of the time.
Right.
Would you consider that a benefit in your personal health?
As long as I was wearing a flat brim hat, yes.
So there you go. How is that having an adverse impact on public health if you're reducing the overall number of cigarettes that an individual person is smoking, or a group of individuals as smokers?
But what if Jay gets an infection after getting the neck tattoo?
Oh man!
Did I get that neck tattoo while I was cloud chasing?
And your tattoo artist was at the same time.
I don't know.
One of the themes in this entire article is, of course, it's focused on youth, and that's always been kind of a buzzword over the last, I don't know, what, year and a half, 2 years?
2 years?
Where it's, yeah. He says, we have to ask ourselves some tough questions when it comes to dealing with the leading cause of preventable death, which is disproportionately cigarette use. What if we can safely transition currently addicted nicotine users to a safer form of nicotine? But what if they need to stay on these products for life? How do we feel about that as a society, permanent long-term use? So this is where it gets into, now you've separated nicotine from the combustible aspect of tobacco cigarettes. Are you now legislating away people's freedom of choice? That's the way I look at it.
Well, by definition, when you legislate something, you're restricting freedom of choice.
Well,
Certainly
yeah.
the way it's legislated now is it seems obvious that freedom of choice is something that's not even taken into consideration anymore.
I don't know, I feel like my health is being protected here, so.
Not with that.
Man. All right, that's all I've got. I don't know, Dana, anything else you want to cover?
All I wanted to do is I wanted to quote Mitch Zeller's Bedrock of Consumer Protection. That's quite a nice little catchphrase, and I'm sure he's going to use that to keep himself employed. Because he said, and I will quote Mitch Zeller, in the absence of this authority, we can't tell the public what's in the aerosol of e-cigarettes. That's a very important sentence there, but it gets better. There was no requirement for companies to register with us, give us information about their products, and that's all going to change over time. That's Bedrock Consumer Protection. I disagree. It's legislation by ignorance.
Well,
What is he, Ed? He is a moron.
If only that's what
Moron.
they were requiring, then we'd be in pretty good shape. But that's not what they're requiring.
Right.
They're
Right.
requiring us to consolidate and or dissipate. That's what their ultimate goal is. They don't want us to succeed.
All right, so in summary, as consumers, support H.R. 2058, support the Cole-Bishop Amendment, make sure that you're contacting your local legislators about that, your congressmen, senators.
I did that today. Can I read my letter that I got today?
Sure.
Because I actually got one. I got a response. I live in the state of Arizona. So Senator Jeff Flake is my senator here, and let me pull up his nice little letter so that I can read that to you folks. It was really very. Oh, this is actually from Trent Franks. He is also in my district. He is representing the district I live in, U.S. Congressman Trent Franks. Dear Mr. Smith, that's me. Thank you for contacting my office. I appreciate the benefit of your views on H.R. 2058, the FDA Deeming Authority Clarification Act of 2015. I will be sure to keep your thoughts in mind should the House have an opportunity to consider this issue. Again, thank you for the time to contact me. I wish you the very best in life, and I hope you will continue to inform me of the issues that concern you. In the meantime, please feel free to visit my website at www.blowme.com, because that's essentially what this is blowme.com. This is a form letter. So,
Yeah.
Are we going to
letters-
broadcast on
Blowme.com.
Who owns that?
we should
Vapor
now.
Joe.
Otherwise, someone's going to sue me. Yeah, Vapor Joe.
Paper Joe.
Vapor Joe probably does. But yeah, so that was the response I got with him via email, and I didn't do that as a sarcastic thing to prove that emails don't do anything, because sometimes, you got to do what you got to do. But continue to call. If you can show up at their office, show up. Stop in, bring a dozen donuts for the office staff, say hello, introduce yourself, and ask them why they're being morons.
I'd like to bring a plus-size bag of sugar-free gummy bears to the FDA's offices.
And you could melt them down and put them in a tank, and they'll become a tobacco product, and they will be in violation.
No, you're missing the point. It has a laxative effect.
Ask them if only children like flavors.
That's right. But do we have any children here? No.
Shocker. Yeah, I mean, Jeff Steyer had some good points to make on this, which is, he's all for, he expected the FDA to regulate e-cigarettes, just not this overreach. Because this goes much further than regulating e-cigarettes to protect youth. It really does. It just eliminates an entire sector of the market from existence if allowed to stand. So for that, we are giving the FDA the BOD award. So there you go, FDA, you get that.
With the largest, most colorful going to Mitch Zeller.
Is that beef jerky?
They're all the same size.
Is that beef jerky?
Sure, Jay, I'll
It's
send
meat.
you some.
It's wild boar.
All right. Nix is
After
saying
show link,
HR
are we doing the
2058,
after-
Cole needs to amend it and resubmit it. Dates are wrong and it has exceeded 365 days. There are people that are saying that you should support both bills, which is why I am saying you should support both bills. As far as I'm concerned, the Cole-Bishop amendment probably has the best chance of passing because it has bipartisan support. The downside is it also has concessions in there as to the marketing to children, etc. But the thing is, those are already in the FDA regulations. So guess what? It doesn't really matter. But we do need a predicate date change, which is why I would recommend that people support both. Because if one fails, you have a catch-all with the other. So
Yes, I am. I would support anyone who supports the fight of the FDA regulations. If they have come out publicly and said that I am going to fight these regulations, absolutely support that man. And as a matter of fact, support anyone who does. I'm not going to tell you to vote for Trump. I'm not going to tell you to vote for Hillary. I'm not going to tell you to vote for Bernie. Anybody. You vote for whoever you want to vote for. There's a lot of complex issues when it comes to politicians and elections. We're talking about a one-issue topic here, but this issue is a big one, and it's overreaching and it's far-stepping. It's ridiculous. Ask them what their viewpoints are. Find out if they're opposed, why they're opposed. Is it ignorance? Is it self-interest? Is it lobbying money? Find out why. Because the more you find out why they oppose, the better you can fight. And that's what needs to happen.
And if you vote for Hillary, my kids can't go to college.
yeah. Okay, and look, Ed, point taken. The VTA amendments, he's saying the VTA amendments are very dangerous. They are not just the same as what is in the deeming at all. Okay. What you have to understand here is that either way, it is a predicate date change. The VTA change does talk about the FDA having control over flavoring and marketing, etc. So obviously, at this point, it would be favorable for the original Cole bill to come to pass. But you're talking about the death of an industry if one of these predicate dates, one of these bills does not get through. So
Correct.
That's the way I look at it.
Yep.
I understand your point. I get it. That's all I got. That's it.
Yeah,
Well,
us too. We know that this has been an absolute mind-numbing hour and 40 minutes or whatever we've been on. And it's probably going to get a little more mind-numbing as time goes on. I would agree with James and say that if you're a vendor, join a trade association because there's going to be strength in numbers, and for nothing else, to keep you informed of what's going on. You can also go to Bill Track and find out how those bills are doing, like HR 2058 and the Cole-Bishop Amendment as well, because those are all listed there. But joining a trade organization definitely helps. If you're a consumer, get involved. Get your family involved. Get your friends involved. Anyone who will listen, get them involved. Because there's more to this issue
than just killing off the vaping industry. This is overstepping into the personal freedoms of human beings, and this really needs to be stopped. And if smokers don't have an avenue to quit smoking, that to me is the ultimate crime here. And that really needs to stop.
Where's your video at, Ed?
It's in the Skype.
In the Skype?
There's a link. There's a link. I put the link in there.
Damn it, man. All right.
Well, and just so you guys know, I may not be around anymore because I am going to be a movie star. I am starring in a feature action film. Yeah, I mean, it's...
You're in the new Star Wars?
Huh?
The new Star Wars?
No, I'm a stunt driver now, and I finally I'm no longer a stunt double. I am like the lead guy now. It's pretty badass.
Huh.
We got some footage.
All right, let's see. So this was Ed Green, April 16th, 2016, Chicago, Illinois. His Jaguar audition video. Let's play it.
Ed Green failed.
Smoke-free mods is no more.
You've made it this far. You're quite certain you want to join this organization. High IQ, perfect psych and cognitive scores. The only thing that remains is your performance test.
Uh-oh, performance.
Yes.
That's the Facebook.
Pissed me.
There goes the service van.
Performed admirably. Now all you've got to do is feed my cat.
Is Feed My Cat
Wow.
Coke or something?
Boom. Boom.
Wow. So you had a... How did you memorize all your lines for that?
It took months. I mean, did you see that move? That rocket
did.
launcher? And man, I mean, that took me quite a few tries to get that right. I messed up a lot of Jaguars.
Did you throw your shoulder out when you did this move when you went around the corner?
Man, like, no, those seats hug you pretty well.
Yeah.
Bolstered. Yeah, but as you noticed, I was not wearing a seatbelt.
Yeah, that's against the law, man.
I was a total BA.
That man says you did all that while you were dripping too.
Yeah. Damn right.
That
was
folks.
So that was a fun day. That was a thing they had in the city where you got to test drive a Jaguar around the city, and then you have a track that you can just like floor these Jaguars. I mean, it was so much fun. And then they put makeup. You go through makeup and get all the glare off your forehead, which I got a beautiful forehead. But yeah, and then they just kind of script you through. It was a lot of fun. And free.
So are you gonna shave your head and be in like the next Jason Statham movie as the bad guy?
Ed Diesel.
I could be the fill-in. I'm the new Paul Walker.
I don't know how Jamie will feel about that, considering how Paul Walker died.
Too
Just
soon.
saying. Yeah, too soon. Too soon. My wife was a big Paul Walker fan. I wondered why those were the only action movies she would ever go see, and then I found out why.
I hear you. Mine's a Jason Statham.
I mean, you can definitely see the similarity. I got kind of a Paul Walker.
And you're
Why?
started beard.
Nick has
even
got a
talk
good
about
question,
that.
Ed. So are you going to buy a Jaguar?
No, if I had what, and here's the funny thing, is I went with my best friend Andre, and he actually priced one out. You can buy a Jaguar for under 40 grand.
Oh yeah, they got
used one?
now for like 34.
They're made by Ford.
Yeah.
I'm like, I had no idea. Not the one that we drove, but
The more you know.
and knowing is half the battle. G.I. Joe.
All right. I'm done.
Do we want an after show link here?
Yeah, we can do an after show. We could probably bring Nick in.
Yeah, bring in Nick. I'm gonna drop.
All right.
I gotta go do more.
You have
work
an
on
audition
the-
tomorrow morning?
Well, I'm trying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it a speaking part this time?
Is it for Pound the
You need to
Puppies
prove
Part
to
2?
people that you're more than just a pretty face, Ed.
That's right. Yeah, and well, he talked about feeding the cat, so it's for Friskers, the cat food. I gotta go do something with that.
You mean Friskies?
All right.
Pound the
Whatever.
Puppies Part
I
2?
don't have a cat. It's IAMS science diet. Yeah.
All right. Are we ready to bounce?
All right, let's roll.
Let's bounce.
Thank
Take
you
it
all
easy,
very
everybody.
much. We'll see you in 2 weeks.
For
again,
episode
Numbers of Blues.
50.
Yeah, that's right. It's a very special episode for us. This will be our
Yes.
50th episode.
Yes, indeed.
I feel every bit of those 50 episodes. It's like,
Yeah,
In his
actually,
boat.
Dog
between
years.
we did. Between
Yes.
you and I, we did.
Yep. All right. Take it easy, everybody. See you
Nick
in 2
wants to know
weeks.
if he can pee first. Well, of course you can. Don't hold it or wet your pants while you're in the after party. That's not
Pee in
fun.
your fist. What?
Telling you what.
Fist.
Just
I don't know.
wait to end the show on the weird